cafe. Anyway.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Yes, it's back. FF episode 2455 and Mike Matthews with the show that's called
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Thought I would do a podcast today, and thank you for listening, whatever day it is for you today. And we're going to have this podcast, and we're going to have Mike Matthews do this thing that he does daily, sort of daily. Occasionally I get interrupted, that kind of thing. The last show was called Acidity, and
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Lemons are good for you. And that is why we talked about acidity, I think.
Mike's
It may have been,
Daily
we were also discussing
Podcast.
how to do video chats.
Yeah!
And the joy from working at work again. But this podcast is going to be a little bit different. There's going to be a little bit of interestingness happening. One thing that we always learn, we know this lesson, but we never seem to learn it. And there was a great show I used to be addicted to called Northern Exposure. And if you are under 20 or under 30, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. It's funny when I talk to 20-somethings and they have no idea who Bruce Springsteen is, Phil Collins, anybody from the 80s. All they know is that Kate Bush song. But no, I'm going back a little bit to the late 80s, early 90s. There was a TV show called Northern Exposure, and it took place in Alaska, and it had a guy from New York, played by Rob Morrow, who would later be on the TV show Numbers, and that last E in Numbers is actually a 3. That's so clever! With Judd Hirsch and that other kid, I can't remember who his name is. But yes, Rob Morrow is this New York doctor. He's just out of med school, and he has to work off. The state of Alaska paid for his college education.
And here's today's podcast picture.
And even in the late 80s, that was a very expensive thing to go through med school. So this is a picture from a year ago, by the way. We'll just go back a year. See it at mikesdailypodcast.com. But he's in this little town called Sicily, Alaska. Actually filmed in Roseville, Washington. But the actors were all really good. There's a young John Corbett on that show. And there's this great scene where Chely, not Chely Shoehart, but Chely, the late great Basil the Boxer. I watched many an episode of Northern Exposure with him. I don't think there was an equivalent to a Basil the Boxer on this show, but there was this moose that walked around. Hey, I'm wearing a moose t-shirt today. Fittingly enough. But there's this one show. This is before Buffy the Vampire Slayer was doing this, and all the other Scrubs and everybody else did like a musical episode. Psych. Which Psych did a movie, the TV show Psych, that used to be, I think, on the USA Network. Now they've got some of the old shows, and they've got some movies that they made after the show ended on the Peacock channel. But there was a musical episode there with Ali Sheedy. So in this one episode of Northern Exposure where they're singing, Chely is singing and telling Janine Turner, you gotta be careful of people that you think you've changed, that you think have changed. People never change. People stay the same. People are like a snake. And even Donald Trump told this exact same story. I forget where it was, at some convention whilst he was president, saying you can't trust certain people. They're always going to be the same. Maybe he was talking about himself. I don't know. But yes, people don't change. And the story is about a girl that helps save a snake. And instead of thanking the girl for saving the snake bites her and she dies. So be careful of those people you think have changed. They haven't. They're still the same. Whatever annoyed you about them before, it's going to annoy you again. Just be either able to accept that, work around that, or just get them out of your lives. But That is a truth that is constant, my friend. Here's the other interesting thing is when I got into radio in 1986, I was in Oxnard, California, and then the radio station I worked for, Q105, decided to say, hey, we don't want any interns here anymore, so I left. And I found a station up in Santa Barbara that I could intern at, and I was going to UC Santa Barbara anyway, so it worked out great. And it was a station called Y97. And it was a pop station, it was a top 40 station, and we played Phil Collins, that's for sure. We played, I think we may have even played Kate Bush, Running Up That Hill. I know for sure we played a lot of the Jets. Oh, wow, we played a lot of the Jets. We played some Bruce Springsteen. But the guy who basically said, yeah, Mike can be an intern here, and then he later he employed me to take care of a show that was a satellite show that needed someone in studio to press the buttons and play the commercials locally. Now that you've got all this technology that can do that for you, but back then you needed someone physically in the studio. So he hired me to do that, and I did that every Saturday night for about 2 years, that show. And then there was a show called American Dance Tracks, hosted by a guy named Jeff Wyatt, who later became the program director for Kiss FM, a huge station in Los Angeles, like the top 40 station that Rick Dees was at for a number of years. But Jeff Wyatt, I met him briefly, very nice guy, years after this. But the guy who hired me has passed away, Steve Smith. And Steve Smith, he actually said, let's put Mike on the air. Let's put him on the radio. He took a chance on me. And then he did what they call an air check, where they go over and listen to how you sounded on the radio, and they give you some tips and some helpful advice. And I'll never forget, we were in this room with no windows, this tiny little converted closet, basically, and he's telling me, as he's listening to the tape, as we go outside a cafe anyway, where we bring Mike's Daily Podcast, somewhere in Podcastro Valley, the last place on earth. He's like going over this tape. And I think I was talking up the intro. I was talking over the intro of a new song that had just come out by David Lee Roth. He had left Van Halen. He was doing that solo career where he sang California, wish they all could be California girls, and I'm just a gigolo, I ain't got nobody. And he had this song called Just Like Paradise. So I'm talking on the intro to that. And I'm super nervous. I don't know what to say. I'm like talking. You're reading the liners. You're reading these little promos about stuff you're giving away at the station and the morning show guy. Make sure to listen, to help your ratings. So I'm doing that. And he's listening to it and he goes, oh, okay, it started out good. And then you ended up in a doghouse somewhere. We don't know where you went, which is pretty much every single Mike's Daily podcast that I have ever done. So in honor of you, Steve Smith, I will do another show where I end up in a doghouse somewhere. Going on, where did this end up going? But Steve Smith recently, he had been a top consultant in radio for a huge radio conglomerate, and about a year ago he left. In fact, I talked a little bit about that because he did a video chat that was uploaded and you were able to watch. And I got to see him and I'm like, wow, he hasn't aged at all. And he told his story and a lot of backstory that I didn't even know about him. I didn't know that once he left Santa Barbara, he ended up in San Jose. And he went a lot of places. And I'm looking here that he's passed away due to unknown causes in his sleep. Happened on Thursday morning. He was 62. He programmed Claire Channel stations, iHeartMedia stations, Radio 1, Cox Media Group. He helped develop Ryan Seacrest and a bunch of people I don't know. I guess he helped out Alice Cooper when he did a radio show. And as you know, I speak very, very lowly about disc jockeys. I think they are the most talentless people. When people go, oh, I remember the old-timey radio guys. They were so great once upon a time on the radio. You'd be driving your car and you'd hear them on a Friday night. No, they didn't. They said they weren't poets or anything. They were just guys rambling, blabbing on the air. They got to play music. I never understood the fascination. Maybe because we all wanted to be that person. So apparently Steve Smith passed away. He was, well, this is actually somebody talking about how they knew him. A lot of people, there'll be lots of people in the radio industry who will have Steve Smith stories. He was a talent whisperer. He was nicknamed Smitty. And that's interesting because my grandma had a cat named Smitty. Okay. And he had lots and lots of platinum records on his wall. So, very, very shocking news. I just found that out. Also, outage happening in Canada. Millions are without internet, ATMs, even 911 lines have been hit. So Canadians have flocked to coffee shops for Wi-Fi. Banks have reported problems with payment systems, and retailers have put up cash-only signs. Yikes. Do you even have any cash on hand? It's all credit cards for most people these days. The outage was at Rogers Communications. It started yesterday morning, knocked out a quarter of the country's network connectivity. It was said early today that internet service was being gradually restored. But what would you do? We use so much of the internet. So many people would just be lost. So many youngins. So many people that don't know who Phil Collins is would be like, what do I do? Who are the Jets? I can't look that up now. Dang it, Mike. We're outside a cafe anyway. Somewhere in Podcaster Valley. Look who's here. Hello, Michael Marsh. It's Madame Rootabega, and I am so sad that your first boss in radio has passed away. Oh, thank you, Madame Rootabega. Yeah. He was my first official boss. I think the first boss that arranged for me to get a paycheck, such as it was. I think it was maybe $2 an hour. It was nothing, but that was the 80s. So, much different now. Much, much different. But people still complain about minimum wage, even though it's much, much higher now. Look who else is here.
Hello, Dave, Mike. This is Valentino, the parking attendant.
And this is Bison Bentley. Do you know that?
Mike, this is very fascinating about the power outage today.
Yeah, power. Do you know that? Yes. Yes, it is. But I hope it is a good weekend for you the rest of this weekend. I'm going to try and get out there and enjoy it, as I am outside now. Madame Rootabega, do you like to be outside? Yes. Do you like it this time of year? Yes. Do you like the heat? No. Yeah, who does? But it's hot everywhere, except for here. Although tomorrow it's supposed to shoot up temperature-wise. So just remember what I told you about people. People are people, so why should it be? Depeche Mode came out with a song in the 80s, and I think I played that as well on that station that Steve Smith had. But remember the people in this world that helped you along in your life, that helped you. Heck, even remember the people that hurt you. And we try and learn from those people, right? Hopefully. Next show, it'll be the wonderful Chely Shoehart, Floyd the Floorman, John Deere the engineer. You can tell me what you think about anything we covered today at this number.
Call now, 336-MM Daily.
Yes, 336-MM Daily, 3 + 3 = 6. MM as in Mike Matthews, Daily as in what this podcast shall try to be. Occasionally I get interrupted, but you know how that is. You can also email me. And with more info, it's A-Frame.
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at mikesdailypodcast.com. Email Mike now at mikesdailypodcast@gmail.com. See you tomorrow. Bye!